Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you had a good week as always. Today we're talking aftermarket parts. Alright, so we've all been there. You're doing a job, you go to get the parts, and usually at least my advisor wants you to quote out both pieces, right? So you want to quote out the factory Toyota equipment and you want to quote out aftermarket parts just to give that customer kind of a choice. 90% of the time, the customer is going to pick the aftermarket part, and then we can get it that day, usually is what that means. Because sometimes if we don't have the parts, we have to order the Toyota ones. It'll be at least a day. So a lot of times we can get the aftermarket parts quicker, but we always like to give the customer the option of getting the factory piece. So aftermarket parts is tough, all right? And a lot of that is gonna depend on your manufacturer. So a Toyota's a pretty simple, Toyota's a pretty common vehicle. It's a lot different than, let's say, someone that works at a Porsche dealership or a Jaguar dealership. Those things are going to be harder to get aftermarket parts for. But Hondas, Toyotas, Ford, Chevy, all the common brands, it's pretty easy. That being said, you can run into some issues. Now, first and foremost is, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people's opinions, quality control issues. Alright, you get aftermarket parts, and there's some aftermarket parts that are pretty good, and most of them are down here and they suck. Now, how do you tell the difference? Well, you don't want to go to AutoZone or Rock Auto and pick the cheapest part you can find. I mean, that's going to give you some Chinese piece of garbage, right? But also, in the automotive world, you kind of you learn what you can and can't use. So like on Toyotas, for example, when we do struts, for whatever reason, you do not want to put aftermarket struts in a Toyota. You want to put Toyota struts in there. Now, I'm more of an advocate of, if you're repairing a car and the car means something to you, put the Toyota equipment or the manufacturer's equipment in there anyway. It's going to fit better and it's always going to perform better. You might have to pay a little bit more, but if you can get it, I recommend getting the manufacturer's original equipment. Because a lot of the time, even if it says OEM quality, it ain't. So, like I said though, Toyotas, like the struts, for whatever reason, we put them in, and the mounts on the new ones, if you put like quick struts in, let's say there's a spring that's broken, the mounts always make noise and they come back, and you end up swapping them out for Toyota ones anyway. And different scenarios like that arise depending on what manufacturer you work for. Second example would be like brake pads. I'm going to pick on Napa. I hate Napa brake pads. It's like they take the pad and they measure it to the exact same spec as this Toyota pad here, and they're identical, and then they paint it or put whatever the coating they put on them is, and they don't fit. They never fit. So, I shouldn't say never, but almost never fit. So you go to put your pads in, and they won't slide or move freely at all, and I've seen guys just jam them in there. It's like, well, no, now your pad's not going to move. So what you end up doing is like shaving a little bit of the paint off on those tabs so that they fit right, and it's just like, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to get a part as simple as a brake pad, and it should fit the vehicle you're putting it in. Okay, so the other thing about aftermarket parts is, I didn't get a review up of this one, but if you can think way back when to the FJ80 Land Cruiser review, that green one, a lot of wind noise. I watched some of my videos from when I first started, and some of the wind noise and quality concern issues that I had, it just makes me cringe. Anyway, I leave it up because then I can kind of see how I'm getting better, and I like that video anyway. But anyway, FJ80. So my dad specifically, actually has two FJ80s. So the second one's a 97, and that one has Old Man Emu suspension, a 3-inch lift, 35s, and it's that one's actually been completely rebuilt. At like 217,000 miles, the head gasket went out. So my father rebuilt it in the garage, and it's really cool to see because he's like, it's obviously DIY. He cleaned absolutely everything. The engine looks brand new. You work in a shop, you don't have time to do all that. Like, you clean stuff up as best you can, but he polished and repainted. It's really cool. Anyway, down to the head gaskets and all the O-rings and seals, every single piece on that engine that he used was Toyota. And I appreciate seeing that. And to me, at least, you know exactly what's in there. You know that it is the best that you could get. And guys, honestly, like the head gasket, just that, because he had to get a different head gasket because he shaved the head a little bit, and then the head gasket was like $300. It was just ridiculous. But again, you know that you have quality OEM parts in that vehicle now. You don't have to worry about, oh, well, I bought such and such, or I bought this seal or this whatever. Is it going to be any good? No, you know it's going to be good because it's actually the brand that the car originally came with. Then, sometimes aftermarket parts bite you hard. So, I was working on a Jeep Compass or something like that, and it was a used car trade-in, and I quoted the struts because they were leaking really, really bad, and the front of the vehicle it just didn't ride nice at all. So I did a few other things about the struts, but I didn't get quick struts because I was able to save the spring. So I've transferred everything over, moved the spring, moved the mounts, and I go to put it back in and together, and I shove the knuckle into that little sleeve, you know, like this on the bottom. I go to slide it in there, won't fit. Now, the first thing you should do when you get aftermarket parts is take them out and examine them and make sure that you actually got the right part. And I mean, like, that they gave you the right part from the shelf and that the part is the same as the piece that you took off. It's going to work. And I did that. I took this one apart and everything looked fine. It looked the same. All the tabs and mounts were in the same spot, the same length, whatever, hunky-dory, so let's go. So after I got it hung in there and I had the top 3 bolts in, I'm trying to get this knuckle wedged in there, and it won't go. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I look, and it ends up being that the metal is like that much thicker on those ears where the knuckle slides in. And it was just, all it was they welded a second seam in there. So it was thick too. You couldn't like just tweak it and put it in. So I went through all that effort of transferring the springs over and everything and hanging them up, and then I couldn't even use them. And you got to think of your time. I mean, because you're in commission, it's all your time. So not only do you have to waste your time trying to figure that out, and you already wasted your time and you're going to have to install them again when you get the right pieces, but you also have to go to parts and explain to them what's going on and then try to figure all that out, plus you're waiting around. It's just a giant waste of time. Now, I ended up getting compensated for that. I just said, look, I mean, I can't afford to be putting parts in twice when this part number is correct, but this manufacturer doesn't make a quality piece. So they ended up sending those back, and then I waited like an hour, and the right piece showed up, and I put that one in, and before I put it in, obviously I checked and slid into the knuckle, but everything was good. My point is, though, you shouldn't have to check like that. Like, if you are going to advertise and create an OEM piece, you should make a piece that fits. Like, how do you come out with a product that doesn't work at all, not even close? So, yeah, so aftermarket parts, I mean, sometimes they're great. I've had some stuff that I've used aftermarket, and it's great, and some stuff is not so great. Perfect example of something that's good. Let's do something good here. My Mazda pickup. Yeah, which one, Jarrett? So, not the one I reviewed. That one's still all stock right now. But my other Mazda pickups that I've had, I've put Weber carburetors on. All right, and that's an aftermarket piece, right? But it's awesome, and you take all the emission stuff off of those little pickups, and they run so much better. I mean, it's just insane. So that's like an example of aftermarket that is actually doing, it's doing some good. It's actually fixing some flaws that the factory had because of, I guess back then it was all emissions plague. But you catch my drift. So it's not always bad, and we are not talking like modified aftermarket parts here. I'm not talking about upgrading stuff, like, okay, let's put this piece on my Mustang from BBK, or let's do Ford Racing heads or a Ford Racing block or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like a normal repair piece that you're just swapping out because it's worn out, like a water pump or the struts or something like that. So, yeah, aftermarket parts, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not so great. I think the golden rule is, though, saving a little bit of money here isn't going to save you a lot of headache later. But that's just my opinion. Thanks for tuning in to the discussion. Let me know what you think about aftermarket parts. What are some of your horror stories? What have you had to deal with? I want to know. Drop a comment below, like, subscribe, hit that bell. See you next time.